Thank you for listening to Persian Women in Tech's podcast, Pivot Shiros, created to introduce and elevate the profile of successful Iranian women in tech.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to Persian Women in Tech's podcast, Pivot Shiros, created to introduce and elevate the profile of successful Iranian women in tech. My name is Sepida Nasiri, founder and CEO of Persian Women in Tech and Women of MENA in Technology, a community serving women in tech who are thriving for career growth and development. I'm excited for this program, Pivot Shiros, where we introduce you to women who have taken different routes within their career to define success. And what does that look like, really? And what opportunities lies ahead for you? My guest today is Zina Bijan, director at Visa. She has an incredible background. If you actually look at her background and how many different routes she has taken, from her being an attorney, a lawyer, having had a law firm, worked at law offices, yet today she works at one of the largest companies in the world. Zina, nice to see you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners so they can get a little bit of a background about you before we dive into the conversation and the questions we have for you today?
Yes. So as you mentioned, my name is Zina Bijan. I have a middle name, Asal, which is a little bit more Persian. I'm a director of contract management within Visa. Have been with Visa for about 5 years now. And as you mentioned, I come from a legal background, having worked as an attorney and currently being an attorney. I was born here in the United States and moved to Iran for some time to complete my education in high school. So once I finished high school, came back here in the US again, did my college education here, went to university, and now working here in the Bay Area.
Wonderful. Very interesting, Zina, or I will say Asad, since I know you as Asad as well. It's very interesting. You know, most people have the other side of the journey where they immigrant in a new place, where you actually were born and raised here, yet went there for a period of time to do some of your schooling and then return back. So that's something that's definitely different than most of our listeners probably have experienced. And it's super unique to also your career journey, your personal journey. I'm always curious.
I would say that that actually, like, I felt like I immigrated twice. So once I immigrated from here to Iran, it was a bit of a just a little bit of culture shock. And then just as I was getting very used to the culture in Iran and kind of like living in Iran, then immigrated when I was 18 back to the US again. So it was again another culture shock back to the US world. So that was interesting on both accounts.
I know it must have been such a personal journey of not only culture shock, maybe for you, or the adjustment, but the language barriers and the challenges, maybe even that comes with that as well.
Absolutely. But I think it had a lot to do with the person who I am today, and just realizing, coming from different backgrounds, both ends of the spectrum, as you see, like Iran and US are always, well, not always, but often in opposite end of a spectrum or in conflict on some major issues. But just understanding both sides and coming from a world where you've lived in both sides of that spectrum has given me a lot of perspective, I think.
That's great. Yes, I think our experiences define us at a later time, challenges and also successes, which brings me to my first question to you. What is the most challenging moment in your life and how did you overcome that situation?
I think everybody has had a lot of challenges in their life for most of us. And my life is pretty much the same. I would say there have been challenges throughout my life. Immigration is not easy for anyone. I have a 6-year-old son, and becoming a mother was a challenge on its own. But I would say probably the biggest challenge was when I graduated from law school. I graduated in 2010. And so up until that point, it was kind of like in the midst of the financial crisis and the housing market crash. And I think up until the 2010 year, most of my peers in law school were finding jobs easy coming out of law school. And, if you had a good education and a good experience, good internships, up until that point, you would find a job easy. I had pretty much funded my own education. So like I had $150,000 in debt when I graduated. And just when I graduated is when a lot of law firms were impacted by the economic crash, and a lot of big firms dissolved. A lot of my peers who were hired the year before were laid off. A lot of attorneys who had a lot of good experience, much more experience than I am, were also laid off. And so there was no job market for me. And that was such a stressful state to come out of school with a large amount of debt and not being able to find employment, and feeling a little bit lost in the world and not knowing what to do next. How do I support myself? I have this degree, but it doesn't seem to be of any use at this point in my life. And I thought I had my life figured out. I had this whole plan that I will graduate, I'll go work for a firm, and life will go as planned. And so it didn't happen, as a lot of time life has it for us. Things don't go as planned. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I faced. How I overcome it, I think it took a lot of trusting myself. It took a lot of support from my family and my friends, and they were crucial. That my support network also, like all my peers in school, people who had done internships for, they constantly reminded me that I'm capable. I will be okay. I will figure this out. I just have to trust myself. And that reinforced the notion to me that I've gotten myself up until this point. Okay, have been able to get through life until now, and we'll go through this as well. And so eventually things started to work out, and I think it was a little bit of a blow to my ego as well, just to say, well, I had this plan for myself, but now maybe I'll don't do that. So I started doing volunteering for a couple of nonprofit organizations, getting involved in the community, just focusing on doing something that I enjoy doing, as opposed to what was expected or what I had in my grand plan for myself. And that taught a lot to me, and I was able to focus on something, doing something while the economy recovered, and I eventually got a job that was actually paying my bills. So
yeah. And what's interesting is it's very relevant to today as well, Zina, right? A lot of us have probably experienced, because of the pandemic, similar situations, whether the schooling aspect, in 2020 particularly, a lot of schools stopped, and then the unknown, when are we going to go back? When are we going to finish our education? If I'm going to be able to even find a job with the situation. So your experience and your inspiration in, continuing and pushing forward can be an example for everyone today as well, since many might have already gone through that this year or last year.
Yeah, I agree. And that was another thing that when I went through that period, people were telling me, "Hey, this has happened before. People have come out of it okay. You'll be okay." So, if anybody's listening right now and they're struggling because of this pandemic, because of how things have been happening in the past couple of years, you trust yourself. You'll be okay. Things will recover. Things will be okay again, and just don't lose the confidence in yourself, and you'll be okay.
That's great advice. Which brings me to another thought is, now that you're looking back as the director at a large company, Visa, what would you tell your younger self? And this can be at any age you want to tell yourself something.
I think along the same lines, what I would tell my 20-year-old, and so giving you a little bit of backstory as to like my background. So I started as when I was in Iran going through high school, the perception was if you're smart, you would study mathematics and physics in high school. And back then there was like a weird system where you actually like would pick some sort of a focus on your high school education. And I was like, well, if people are to think that I'm smart, I have to go mathematics and physics. And so I studied that, came to the US. And again, the perception here was a lot among our community. I think Middle Easterns in general, you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a engineer. And so, I think a lot of my friends were studying engineering, and I'm like, well, I sure can study engineering as well. So I just started studying engineering, studied for 3 years. And my third year, I was like, well, this is not something that is making me happy. I'm not really enjoying the course that I'm studying. I don't think I'm going to be happy, being an engineer. And I started to dig deep as to like, what is it that I want to do? What is it that makes me happy? I think, again, with the theme of like, I have to live up to the standards of the community, my parents, my peers, my friends, what would they think of me? I chose to go to law school and kind of like finish my education that way, which I'm pretty grateful for, actually. Like, law school was what was really interesting to me, and I ended up working out pretty great, and I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. But I think what I would tell my 20-year-old is, don't do things for others. Don't do things because others expect you to, or what you think they would think of you, or what their perception of you would be. Do things because they truly make you happy. At this stage of my life, I think what I value the most is that I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm happy at my job. I'm happy at the type of work that I'm doing. And if I had stuck with, just what people expect of me, or what would people perception of me be, probably I would have been very miserable doing something that I don't like, just because I thought other people would expect me to do it, or other people thought, that's what I should be doing. So I would say figure out what makes you happy. What is it? What's your true calling? What interests you? Dig deep inside and do things for you, not for others.
I agree. And very interesting that you did change your career path midway. And you're very right. We get those 3 options handed to us. Pick one of the 3, doctor, lawyer, or the mohandes, the engineer. So we've all been there. And then the shocking revelation of, I'm not going to do what I wanted to do. And it's okay, as you said, that, we can change our mind at any point. There is no age defined time in our life. We only live one life, and we should be able to change things at any point. Nothing is too late. So that's a pretty good advice to give your younger self, that at any time, do what you feel that it's right for you. Don't listen to others. Make yourself happy. Make your path your path, basically. Don't copy others. Nobody is like you.
Yeah, I think in our culture specifically, it's just ingrained in us that, societal expectations and people's perception is valued in our and in Middle Eastern culture in general, especially Iranian culture, especially. And so I think stepping away from that was crucial for me, just to to your point, like we only have this one life, and so I think the majority of that should be spent doing things that makes us happy or is meant to be for us as an individual, as opposed to what other people think.
Yeah, agreed. So I have some fun question for you. And I ask this every guest, just out of curiosity. Everyone has a different lifestyle. What's your morning routine? What do you do? What time do you get up? Do you have Persian tea?
I don't have Persian tea just because it's pretty chaotic in our household in the morning. So I only have one child who's 6, but and he's a relatively good kid, but just nowadays, and if you had asked me that question probably 2 years ago, I would have been able to give you a complete routine down to the minute of how we do things in our household. But today, with the pandemic, people, myself and my husband, we both work from home for the most part. So getting people and getting my son out of the door into school, coming back home, it kind of varies. So I don't have a routine for that I do things exactly the same way every day. What I'll try to get in the morning is that when I wake up, just lying in bed, I give myself 5 minutes, just checking in with myself. So I taught myself, like, I used to just wake up in the morning, immediately reach out for my phone, see what the world was up to while I was sleeping, check emails, immediately get sucked into work and news and things like that. And so what I do now is just give myself 5 minutes in bed, close my eyes, check in with myself. Maybe you could call it a bit of a meditation, but I'll just, check how I'm doing in the morning, how I'm feeling, how is my body doing? Do I have any aches or pains anywhere? And then, maybe just give myself or tell myself a little bit of inspiration or set an intention for my day, and then get up and get into the craziness.
That's great. I think that you are easing into the day of this hectic, crazy day in such a, I would say, seamless way. So not just going into it, but really defining, as you said, putting intention, which is really nice. Your day doesn't have to be the same day and a routine day, but setting intention and calming your body into getting ready for it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. The other thing that I try to do every morning is get maybe at least a couple of minutes of sunshine in my face, direct from the sun, not, just open a window, go in the backyard or something, and just get a couple of minutes in sunshine. And what I found is, like, that would be my morning cup of coffee, the equivalent of it. Just the sunshine wakes me up pretty good, and that sets me off for the day. And then the rest is kind of like whatever happens. So
yeah, hit me with it. I hope our listeners are in parts of the world where the sun is shining at this time. So please take that time and go and get some sunshine. I know, for example, Canada is pretty cold in the winter season. So I don't know if they get some sunshines there. Zina, one thing that always comes to mind for a lot of people when we look back is, has there been anything or anyone that has had a great impact in your life?
Oh, there have been many. I think a lot of my success and where I am today, a lot of people helped me get there. And so that is family, friends, and as well as, like, I've been fortunate to have good managers at work who have, sponsored me and championed for my success. if I have to pick one person, I would say my older sister. So my older sister was the person who immediately after she kind of like graduated high school was like, well, I'm going back to the US. And she did it alone. So she like none of my parents were in the US at the time. She decided that, you know, she can handle life and she can handle herself and support herself. And she came to the US. She's 4 years older than me. And I was just in awe of her as a young Iranian woman leaving. And, you know, she wasn't married. She wasn't, again, my parents weren't here. So she was like, you know, I'm more than capable of the next guy to do this on my own. And she became this really successful person. And she always had this air of, or she always has this air of like, you know, I can do this. If I set my mind to it, I can do it. And she became this really, really successful person in one of the big companies here in the US. And I was just in awe of watching her. And she made me realize that it's possible, that, you know, I'm not, because I'm Iranian, because I'm a woman, or any of that, like that's not holding me back from anything. And like similar to her, I can achieve whatever I want to if I send my mind to it and I do the work. So I think she was one of the most impactful people in my life, just watching her do things and just, you know, realizing I can do that too. And so I think that's just the more people, like, you know, in general are exposed to similar examples of people similar to your background, similar to your circumstances, achieving things, the more you realize, you know, this is doable. There is no ultimate kind of like rule that you can't break this, you know, call it in the US glass ceiling or whatever may be the case.
Exactly. And you said something really important, Zina, that we have to see someone who looks like us or who has gone through our challenges or is from our background, right? When you look in the tech world or the STEM world, majority that are highlighted are men. So they don't look like us. They don't have some of our challenges. And then you look at the tech ecosystem, you have the Mark Zuckerbergs and Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, and they don't look like us. They don't have the same path or challenges or background. So if you don't have people like yourself or your sister or others to be an example of what is possible, how can we dream and be inspired, right?
Exactly.
That's great. I'm so excited to hear that you had someone so close. You didn't have to dream somebody outside. You first and foremost had someone, you know, in your household that was able to do things and inspire you to follow as well your dreams.
Yeah, and I actually learned something from my current manager. She's a lesbian woman who's coming from a minority background. And she's this VP in the company right now. And what I've learned from her is that she tells a lot of women, and she helps with generally like women empowerment and things like that. What she told me, and that made me realize, you know, how important it is, this kind of like seeing people is like, one of the reasons she's so driven is because she wants to have people in similar backgrounds see her success and be inspired by it. So if you're from LGBTQ community, if you're a minority, if you're a woman, if you're a combination of any of those, and you think, you know, this is impossible for me to achieve, you see other people do it in your set of circumstances, which may not happen very often, to your point. Like, you know, we see a lot of, you know, maybe white men or a lot of men, and maybe not a whole lot of women, maybe from, you know, such minority backgrounds. And if you have any more than one of those kind of like criterias, where you're a woman or you're a minority background or you're this, you're that, if you combine any more than one, then, you know, it's even harder for you to imagine that you can do what you want to do. So having those examples is very crucial, and just seeing people do it and then getting inspired by it.
That's so amazing. And yes, you're right. We need to have more people of minority groups that are represented, and so that we can see, not just, even in our culture, we have so many different identities as individuals, right? And so having those representation would make such a difference for us. I'm curious if you want to recommend, or have there been books that have been having impact in your life for knowledge purpose, or you want to recommend for anyone to read?
One book that I found very helpful to me is called Ikigai, and it's this concept of finding your purpose. It's a Japanese phrase, I believe, that means the purpose of your life, or the purpose where you get up in life, get up from every day, and that's the purpose of your life. And for me, again, just going back to this theme in my life of trying to figure out what is my purpose, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing for me, what makes me feel valued, feel happy. And that was crucial for me to kind of again, search within and understand what drives me, what makes me tick, what makes me happy. That was interesting. One Iranian book that I really, really, really love is called Daijan Napelon. And the reason I loved that book was because it cleverly makes fun of kind of traditions, or not traditions, but expectations of people and society of individuals. And then, a little bit of a, having fun with expectations and perception and rules and things like that. So I would say maybe those two books were my favorites.
Beautiful. Well, my last question to you is, what do you want to, when you leave this world, or if you want to leave this world at some point, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, what do you want to leave behind?
Again, this is one of those questions that if you had asked me maybe 5 years ago, I had a different answer for you. But today, what I want to leave behind is having touched people. I at some point I wanted to be, famous. I wanted to, not famous in the world of I wanted to be an actress, but I wanted to be, made it top of some, have a really, really high level job position and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that at this stage in my life, I just want to touch as many people as I can that come across or come through somehow in my life, and I connect with, and have a human connection with them, and have a true connection where we are connecting as humans. So being able to have the most meaningful number of connections with humans possible maybe is what I want right now for my end legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important. What we leave behind is how we touch people, how we make people think or get inspired. So what you're saying is very inspirational. It's not that you don't want to leave anything but touching people and hoping for, creating impact for them in this world. So that's very beautiful. Zina, thank you so much for today. And you're such a valuable insight and inspiration to our community. We really appreciate you and what you have given to our community in regards to your career path and inspiring our generation and the next generation. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on social media as well, so Facebook or on Instagram. You can also get in touch with me. One thing that I wanted to mention to you, Seppi, is that I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Having created this organization, Women of MENA in Tech, Persian Women in Tech, it's so valuable to highlight these examples and these success stories for people similar to myself, whereas maybe I was lucky to see my sister, but not everybody is so lucky to see people so close to home. So what you're doing is very impactful, very meaningful, and I wanted to just say thank you for doing that work.
Thank you so much, Zina. And for everyone listening, you can get in touch with Zina through LinkedIn and other social media platforms. And if you know someone who is incredible and we should highlight, please email us at podcast@Persian Women in Tech. It was such a great pleasure talking to you today with Zina, and we are looking forward to our future guest. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and thank you for listening in.
Thank you for joining us this week on Pivot Heroes. Make sure to visit our website, PersianWomenInTech.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and SoundCloud so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on our podcast platforms and share the podcast link with friends and help us elevate Iranian women in tech and inspire our community.